There are maps we inherit from the world, stamped in classrooms, pressed into passports, offered up by the steady hands of authority and assumption. And then there are the maps that live beneath those, the ones you don't read with your eyes, but with your soul. Canada, for many, exists as a country of measured vastness, stitched together by rivers, forests, highways, and a polite mythology. But if you look with the quiet intensity of your inner gaze, you'll find that the Canada you were taught to see is only a veil, a painted surface upon an ancient sleeping titan. Beneath the topography of provinces and political boundaries lies something older than colonization, deeper than language, and more radiant than any winter sunrise over the Rockies. Canada is not just land, it is frequency. What if the familiar maple leaf mosaic of Canada was just a symbolic skin wrapped around an energetic giant? What if what we call Canada is actually one of the Earth's most subtle tuning forks, resonating with a quiet, spiritual song that few have ever truly heard? This isn't the nationalism of textbooks or the tourist-laced imagery of the Rockies and Niagara. This is about the sacred blueprint encoded beneath the tundra and timber, the unseen geometry humming under the lakes, the sacred contracts that echo across time through its indigenous stewards. This land is not passive ground beneath your feet. It is a living, dreaming entity. It listens. It remembers. For those born here or drawn here from elsewhere, there is often an inexplicable resonance, like a bell ringing just beyond the edge of perception. A pull, a subtle whisper, perhaps first noticed in the stillness of snowfall or the way mist moves over still northern waters. Canada calls people not just physically, but spiritually, and it has done so for thousands of years. The soul knows, long before the flags, long before the railroads stitched across the ribs of the land, long before even the tribal fires that first danced under the aurora borealis, there was a deeper story, a sacred contract between soul and soil. To see Canada merely as a political entity is to miss its true function. It is a spiritual crucible, designed to refine, awaken, and activate. Its chill is not just climate, but clarity. Its silence is not emptiness, but listening. And its distance is not isolation, but invitation. An invitation inward. The vastness of the land mirrors the vastness of your own consciousness. Here, space is not just geographical, it is metaphysical. It is initiation space. In this land of long winters and slow suns, things unfold differently. Time stretches, awareness deepens. The ego begins to unravel at the seams, not through force, but through presence. And it's not accidental. You didn't end up in Canada, whether by birth or by choice, without purpose. The soul places itself precisely like a chess piece on a sacred board. What you may have thought was simply a coincidence of birthplace or a fluke of immigration was in fact a deliberate alignment with a land calibrated for specific frequencies of transformation. There are people scattered across the world whose energy signatures are uniquely compatible with this terrain. Canada holds a certain spiritual bandwidth, quiet, high, and ancient, and only those attuned to that range can truly hear it. But what is that frequency, and what truths lie encoded in this land that are so often overlooked or dismissed beneath the white noise of modern civilization? To understand that, we must look deeper, beyond the surface story, beyond the colonial narrative, beyond even the collective assumptions that saturate the national consciousness. We must peel back the cartographic illusion and enter the mythic architecture that pulses beneath. For hidden under every city grid, Every provincial border, every economic system and political slogan, there is something sacred that has remained untouched and often unseen. It is guarded not by institutions but by silence. It is preserved not in books, but in the dreams of the land. And it speaks not in words, but in feeling, in intuition, in synchronicity, in subtle nudges that most have learned to ignore. This land has guardians, both physical and etheric. Its original peoples, its animal spirits, its ancestral energies, and its elemental consciousness have long held sacred space for a collective awakening that was always meant to take place here, not as a spectacle, but as a deep internal remembering. For Canada is not a place of noise and glamour. It is a place of stillness, of breath, of reflection. It is where the soul comes not to escape, but to face itself, fully and unflinchingly. To journey into the spiritual truth of Canada is to step off the visible map and enter a terrain marked only by your inner compass. It requires patience, humility, and a willingness to shed the stories you've been told in order to listen to the ones the rocks and rivers still whisper. This is not a tourist trail or an intellectual exercise. This is an initiation, and like all initiations, it begins with unknowing. So consider this your threshold, not the beginning of a story about Canada, but the unveiling of one, a remembering, a descent into layers of meaning that were never gone, only hidden behind the illusion of modernity. Let us now begin that descent, with open hearts and curious minds, into the spiritual topography of the land known as Canada. Not the Canada of textbooks, nor politics, nor polite reputation, but the Canada that lives beneath the map, the Canada that remembers who you are. If the introduction is a threshold, then this section is a torch carried through the passage, casting light not on external facts, but on the deep archetypal forces that shape the inner essence of what we call Canada. And yet, we must acknowledge a subtle irony. What is most foundational here cannot be grasped by intellect alone. To speak of the spiritual truth beneath Canada's map is not to define, but to evoke, to allow certain concepts to rise like mist off a still lake in early dawn. They are felt before they are understood, known in the body before they become thought. The first great theme embedded in this land is stillness as revelation. In a world addicted to movement, stimulation, and noise, Canada offers silence not as absence, but as a form of divine communication. The long winters and wide open spaces are not just environmental, they are initiatory. In the hush of falling snow, in the endless quiet of northern forests, a different kind of knowing emerges. It is the knowing that exists beneath mental chatter, beneath identity, beneath the need to be anything at all. This is a land that doesn't just ask for contemplation, it demands it. And those who resist are often pushed into solitude, as if the land itself is inviting them again and again to listen. Then there is the theme of ancient guardianship, most vibrantly carried in the wisdom of Indigenous peoples. Before the colonial layers were painted over the land, the spiritual maps were already drawn, in song, in story, in ceremony. These maps didn't separate spirit from nature, they wove them together into a single living narrative. The land was not property, but memory. It was, and remains, a sentient being, a relative, a teacher. And through the teachings of the first peoples, we glimpse the architecture of truth that predates every capital city, every confederation, every anthem. These are the truths written in the bones of the earth itself. In this deeper vision of Canada, land is not location, it is vibration. There are regions that hold specific frequencies, like crystalline circuits, humming beneath the surface. British Columbia, for instance, acts like a bridge between realms, between selves. Its mountains stand like guardians of memory, and its rain is a cleansing, a rebirth. The Canadian Shield in the east pulses with ancient grounding energy, like the Earth's spine exposed for healing. The Northern Territories remain one of the last untouched thresholds between human consciousness and cosmic wilderness, offering a liminal space where the sky speaks directly to the spirit in waves of color and cold. These aren't metaphors, or rather, they are metaphors that are real. In spiritual cosmology, everything physical is also energetic. Geography is geometry, is consciousness. To travel through Canada is to move through distinct vibrational fields, each capable of catalyzing different aspects of self. The truth beneath the map is that the land is not neutral. It shapes you, it remembers you, and in many cases, it called you. This leads us to another core thread: soul placement. You didn't land in Canada arbitrarily. The soul chooses its geography with the same precision that a seed chooses its soil. Whether you were born here, drawn here by migration, or simply felt an inexplicable pull to visit or connect with this country, you were responding to a deeper alignment. Canada is a spiritual arena for souls who carry certain tasks, often subtle ones, often quiet. Unlike the fiery initiations found in places like Egypt or India, Canada's awakening is gradual, internal, sometimes even icy. But make no mistake, it transforms, not with spectacle, but with sincerity. The collective identity of Canada has long been associated with humility, with restraint, with observation rather than domination. But beneath this cultural persona lies an esoteric counterpart: Canada as sacred witness. This is a land that holds space, that allows others to unfold without intrusion. This is not a coincidence, it is a spiritual mirror. Canada invites you to witness yourself, to see what remains when all else quiets, to face what still echoes when the noise fades. There is something about this country that activates inner truth by removing outer distraction. But not all is gentle in this terrain. Canada is also a land of buried truths, of spiritual amnesia and colonial scars. It has absorbed violence. It has witnessed erasure. Beneath the beauty of its landscapes lies a deep ancestral wound that continues to vibrate through its fields and rivers. These buried histories are not just socio-political. They are energetic. They live in the land like unresolved trauma in the body. And for the awakening soul, Canada presents a double task: to receive its healing frequency and to help transmute its pain. Those who feel the ache of forgotten voices and unacknowledged spirits are not imagining things. They are reading the land's energetic memory. And yet this very tension between amnesia and memory, between beauty and pain, is what makes Canada such a profound spiritual crucible. It is a place of layered consciousness, a mirror of Earth's own dual nature, and those who tune into this land's deeper pulse will begin to feel the paradox of being here, that you are at once standing on ancient ground and walking through a dream designed to wake you up. So, what is Canada beneath the map? It is not a country. It is a frequency field, a soul-encoded territory of awakening, quiet revolution, ancestral memory, and energetic transformation. To truly know Canada is not to study it, but to attune to it, to let it whisper through your intuition, your breath, your bones, and in that whisper, to remember something not about history, but about yourself. To understand the deeper nature of any place, one must go beyond facts and into the mythic, beyond the archive and into the archetype. This land we call Canada is not merely a nation, but a living narrative, a myth unfolding across snow-covered fields and within the hearts of those who walk upon it. Stories are not simply told here, they are remembered through the land itself, as if each mountain, each river, each forest is a sentence in a sacred script only the soul can decipher. Let us begin with the symbol of the north. In most cosmologies, north is not simply a direction but a gate. It is the domain of stillness, of inner truth, of clarity sharpened by solitude. In indigenous traditions across Turtle Island, the north is often associated with wisdom, ancestors, the white buffalo, or the silent snow. But spiritually, the north also represents the unknowable, the threshold beyond the known self. Canada, stretched endlessly toward the magnetic pole, wears this identity as a cloak. It is a nation wrapped in the mystery of the North, silently guarding secrets the rest of the world has forgotten to ask about. The North, in this context, becomes not just a location, but a psychic mirror. To journey into Canada is to move toward the parts of yourself you've kept quiet, your inner winter, your untouched wilderness. There is a reason the aurora borealis flickers in Canada's sky. That otherworldly dance of light is not just a meteorological phenomenon. It is an ancient ceremony of the cosmos performed just for those who dare to look up. It reminds us that the sky, too, dreams, and that we are being watched over by forces more ancient than time. Then there is the forest, another guardian of the Canadian soulscape. Trees in Canada are not just flora, they are archives. Each towering pine or maple is a column in a cathedral of silence, holding centuries of listening. The boreal forest is more than a biome, it is a temple, and those who walk among these trees with reverence will notice that time behaves differently here. Thoughts soften, the ego dissipates. The forest whispers truths in the language of scent and rhythm. You are not alone among trees, you are remembered. Consider also the Canadian Shield, the bedrock of the continent, exposed and raw. It is the geological spine of the land, billions of years old, carved by time and elemental rage. To stand upon it is to feel the bones of earth exposed. Metaphysically, it symbolizes foundational consciousness, what remains when all illusion is stripped away, and it runs fittingly through the heart of Canada. The land itself is telling us, here lies something immovable, something eternal, something that cannot be colonized by ideology or masked by flag. In this way, the shield is not just stone, it is spiritual marrow, but perhaps the most haunting and sacred of Canada's symbolic threads is its Indigenous dreaming. Before it was Canada, this land was a mosaic of nations, stories, ceremonies, and star maps. The Cree, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Mi'kmaq, the Dene, the Coast Salish, each held not only territory but cosmology. Their teachings, often dismissed as myth, are in fact encrypted spiritual technologies. The concept of the Seven Fires prophecy, for instance, speaks of a time when humanity would come to a crossroads, a time when people would have to choose between a path of material destruction and one of spiritual rebirth. Many Indigenous elders say we are in the time of the seventh fire now. In this light, Canada becomes not a political project, but a spiritual proving ground, a place where the dreams of Earth's ancient caretakers and the confusion of modern seekers collide. And in that collision, something new is born, not as a nation-state, but as a renewed covenant with the Earth. There is also the myth of the White North, projected globally as a place of cold and politeness. But beneath that narrative lies a deeper archetype, the silent initiator. This is not the fire of revelation, but the ice of reflection. Canada does not burn you into truth. It freezes the lies until they crack and fall away. Its spiritual method is slow, glacial, but no less powerful. In fact, perhaps more enduring. What is burned may be forgotten. What is frozen becomes part of the landscape. And let us not ignore the symbol of water, so prevalent in Canada's identity, its endless lakes, rivers, oceans. Water is memory, flow, transformation. In dream language, water is the unconscious mind, the soul's journey, the emotional field. Canada is not just a land of water, it is a land made of water. It invites you to remember, to cleanse, to surrender. Here the waters are still wild, still sacred. They know things your mind has forgotten. And when you stand on their shores, if you're quiet enough, they may whisper them back to you. Taken together, these symbols, north, forest, rock, ancestor, fire, ice, water, form a kind of spiritual alphabet, a hidden language written to the land itself. Canada's true story is not one of colonization, currency, or constitution. It is the story of a living dreamscape waiting to be remembered, a land that teaches not by force, but by presence, a map not drawn on paper, but in soul patterns and sacred agreements. And so the deeper truth beneath Canada's map is not something that can be taught. It must be felt, it must be entered, and once you've entered it, you're never quite the same. The snow becomes scripture, the forest becomes family, the silence becomes sermon, and the map becomes a mirror. To carry the weight and wonder of symbolic truths is one thing, to live them is another. Now we descend from the mythic clouds, not to abandon what we've discovered, but to integrate it, to root the ethereal into the soil of everyday experience. For if Canada truly is more than a country, if it is a spiritual field, a living initiator, a land encoded with awakening, then what does it ask of those who dwell within it? And how, in the thrum of ordinary days, can its unseen teachings be honored, embodied, and remembered? Begin here, with presence. In a society built on productivity and distraction, Canada whispers the opposite. Its vastness is not meant to be traversed at speed, but absorbed in stillness. The everyday Canadian experience of walking in cold air, hearing the wind move through evergreens, watching the seasons change with slow majesty, is not mundane, it is liturgy. To be present in this land is a form of prayer, but one must choose it. Choose to slow down. Choose to listen to the long silences between thoughts. Choose to see the sacred not just in ceremony, but in snowfall, in still lakes, in the sharp clarity of a breath taken on a winter morning. These are not just aesthetic experiences, they are portals. The land does not transform you instantly. It does not demand grand acts, but it watches, it waits. And those who walk it with awareness begin to shift. The more time spent in nature, true nature, not landscaped parks but raw wilderness, the more your inner circuitry realigns with the earth's. You find yourself feeling the pulse of the land like a subtle heartbeat beneath your feet. You begin to make decisions not from fear but from intuitive resonance. You notice synchronicities multiplying, dreams becoming more vivid, encounters with animals or weather that seem impossibly symbolic. This is the land speaking. This is Canada beneath the map, using your life as a message board. One of the most profound real-world implications of understanding Canada as a spiritual landscape is the reconnection to Indigenous wisdom, not out of charity, but necessity. The truth is, Canada cannot fully awaken until its original teachings are honored and reintegrated. This is not just social justice, it is spiritual reclamation. The teachings of the first peoples are not relics, they are keys. When a person begins to walk this land with respect, when they learn from elders not just out of interest but out of reverence, a new kind of healing begins, both personal and collective. This is not performative, it is participatory. It means listening, supporting, decentering oneself without erasing oneself. Real-world transformation begins the moment we recognize that truth isn't owned, it's shared, and that spiritual truth is often carried by those the modern world tried to silence. There are practical shifts too, subtle but powerful. People who feel the land calling them often begin to live differently. They simplify, they choose depth over noise, they spend more time walking, journaling, praying, not out of religious duty, but out of existential hunger. They may leave careers that once made sense, but now feel like static. They may relocate to be closer to water, forest, or ancestral memory. They may begin to feel drawn to specific stones, animals, even weather patterns. These aren't whims, they are signals, and the more you trust them, the more coherent your life becomes, not necessarily easier, but more aligned. Emotionally, the land teaches through contrast. The long, cold winters aren't just seasonal, they're symbolic. They teach patience. They surface grief that might otherwise remain buried. They require inner fire. And so, part of practical integration is learning how to sit with the winter of the soul, to not panic when things slow down, to not pathologize sadness or solitude. These emotional winters are part of your spiritual ecosystem, as natural as snowfall, and just like the land, your own soul will thaw in time. You must only trust the rhythm. There is also something to be said about community. Canada's spiritual frequency is quiet, and often those who hear it feel isolated, like whispers are being spoken that no one else around them seems to notice. But part of the soul's work here is not just solitary awakening, it is sacred gathering, finding others who feel the same tremor beneath the surface, who understand that the ordinary world is only the beginning. Circles, teachings, sacred fires, even online gatherings. These are modern echoes of ancient counsel. To integrate Canada's deeper truth means finding or building spiritual community, even if it begins with just one shared conversation beneath a full moon. Economically, psychologically, ecologically, Canada is facing questions of identity, but beneath all of them is the same invitation: will this land be used or honored? Will it be mined for wealth or remembered as a teacher? And each individual plays a part in answering that. The way you walk the land, speak of it, care for it, affects the collective field. You are not a passenger. You are a participant in a spiritual terrain that extends beyond geography. To live the truth beneath Canada's map is not about abandoning the world. It is about living in it with greater reverence, clarity, and courage. It means recognizing that every part of life, from your food choices to your breath to your relationships, is part of the sacred circuit. It means treating nature as alive, time as layered, emotions as messages, and silence as scripture. It means becoming not a consumer of life, but a keeper of light. And perhaps, most importantly, it means remembering who you are, not just as a person, but as a soul that answered the call of this land. A soul that arrived not by chance, but by choice. And now that you remember, the next chapter is yours to write. We have journeyed together across unseen territory, from the still shores of intuition to the icy cathedrals of spiritual symbolism, from the hidden maps of indigenous memory to the living breath of the northern winds. We have peeled back the surface of a nation and glimpsed something ancient, cosmic, and deeply personal pulsing underneath. We've seen that Canada is not a political construct nor simply a landmass bordered by oceans and guarded by polite customs. It is a soul place, a temple without walls, a dream stitched into the earth by forces older than history, vibrating silently beneath the pace of modern life. Now we return, not to where we started, but to a deeper version of it. You are no longer a passive observer of Canada. You are a participant in its spiritual awakening. The land does not exist outside of you. It moves through you. You carry its codes in your bones, its echoes in your breath, its purpose in your walk. And now that the illusion of the map has been pierced, you have a choice. You can return to the surface, to the noise, to the idea of Canada as a cold expanse punctuated by cities. Or you can live from the knowing. You can walk as one who remembers. The veil that separated you from this deeper awareness was never thick. It was translucent. It was made of forgotten stories, broken connections, and the kind of silence born from disconnection, not reverence. But now, in remembering the land as a spiritual entity, the silence becomes sacred. It becomes full, and in that fullness, a great truth emerges. This land is alive, and it chose you too. This is not metaphor. This is metaphysics. The soul comes to earth with intention, and geography is not incidental. It is encoded. The wind knows your name. The stones recognize your frequency. The waters remember your song. And when you align with that frequency, when you attune to the rhythm of the true Canada, your life begins to shift, not through magic, but through resonance. And yet, it is not enough to know this. Awakening, like love, is not a state to be achieved, but a practice to be lived. So what does it look like to walk in alignment with the spiritual truth of Canada? It looks like listening before speaking, like feeling before judging. It looks like visiting the forest not for recreation, but for communion. It looks like acknowledging the pain woven into the land's history, not as guilt, but as a sacred responsibility to carry truth forward. It looks like honoring the indigenous teachings, not as artifacts, but as breathing wisdoms still capable of healing not only this land, but the entire planet. It means shifting from ownership to stewardship, from consumption to reverence, from colonization to reconciliation, not as slogans or hashtags, but as living practices. You are not separate from the earth you walk on. Every footstep is a choice, to walk blindly or to walk prayerfully. This awakening is not loud. It does not demand that you change the world with a shout. It asks that you change your presence with a whisper, that you begin to recognize the invisible architecture that surrounds you at all times, how the mountains are temples, how the rivers are memory, how the cold is medicine, that you learn to read the land not with your intellect, but with your being. This is the call of Canada beneath the map, to become a light bearer in the quiet, a truth keeper in the stillness. You were not placed here to build an empire. You were placed here to remember your essence, and in doing so, you help the land remember itself. This is the transformation, not external but internal. not immediate, but inevitable. You may feel the changes subtly at first, a clarity in your dreams, a resonance with the wind, a deepened intuition that you cannot explain. And then, like snowmelt feeding a hidden spring, your life will begin to reorganize around truth, around authenticity, around reverence. And so we return to the beginning. Only now the map is no longer needed, because the map was never the territory, and the territory was never just land. It was always consciousness. It was always love. You have crossed a threshold. You now carry something sacred. Protect it, share it with care, and most of all, live